Hello and welcome to the Commander's Quarters. I'm your host, Mitch. Glad to have you here. Here at the Commander's Quarters, we're all about Commander on a budget. Today we have an episode of Commander's 2 Cents. On episodes like these, I give you my own personal take on topics about the format in general and current news. This show and episodes like this one are possible thanks to viewers like you. If you're looking for an easy way to help support this show, make sure that you like, share, and subscribe. Also, hit that bell notification icon so you don't miss any new episodes. And while you're at it, subscribe and review our podcast as well. You can also go check out our playmats and other merchandise at thecommandersquarters.com. Another easy way to support this show is with our TCG player affiliate links. So whether you're buying a deck or individual cards, you can use this general link right here or one in the description. And the final way that you can support this show is by supporting us directly by becoming a patron. There are many benefits to being a patron, and I truly couldn't do this without all of their support. So in a previous episode, I talked about the best commanders for each companion. Now the companions were a brand new thing from Ikoria, and outside of them, we've also got some other legendary creatures as well. So today we're going to be talking about my favorite Ikoria commanders. There were a lot of great options from this set, and I've narrowed it down to my favorite 10, so let's get into it. So let's start things off with number 10. So my 10th favorite commander from this new set is actually one of the companions with Garuda, the Macro Sage. You can use it as your companion, but I actually like it as a commander, and I'll talk about why. Anyways, it's a 5/4 dinosaur hippo that costs 3 Simic. It has, when it enters the battlefield, draw a card for each other permanent you control with a converted mana cost of 3 or greater. Again, that companion requirement doesn't matter since we're using it as our commander and not as our companion. So our deck isn't restricted to only contain cards with converted mana costs of 3 or greater. That being said, the more permanents that we control with a converted mana cost of 3 or greater, the better. In the right deck, this can draw you a ton of cards, and if you can abuse that ATB, you can do it over and over again. Now, Simic has plenty of powerful commanders, so it doesn't really need too much help. But with Garuda, I think you can take it in an interesting and different direction. So I think a fun direction could be a Garuda Enchantress build. By focusing on enchantments that cost 3 or greater, you can draw a ton of cards when Garuda comes into play. Cards like Overgrowth can ramp you by enchanting your lands. Enchantress's Presence can draw you even more cards when you cast enchantment spells. And then Mirror Maid can copy your best enchantments out there. And of course, you're probably also going to want some ways to blink Garuda or to return it back to your hand to recast it. Again, this might not be the most powerful way to take it, but I think it's an interesting and unique direction. But now let's move on to number 9. And my 9th favorite commander from Ikoria is Godzilla, King of Monsters, otherwise known as Zilortha Strength Incarnate. This might be somewhat confusing, but the actual card's name is Zilortha Strength Incarnate, so I'll refer to it as that. Zilortha is a 7/3 dinosaur with trample that costs 3 red-green. It says lethal damage dealt to creatures you control is determined by their power rather than their toughness. So essentially this is like a power matters deck. It's kind of the opposite of a Doran or Arcades deck that really care about toughness. In effect, Zilortha is basically a 7/7 trampler for 5. So you want to fill your deck with a bunch of creatures that have a high power and you don't really care too much about their toughness. So Thunderblast, which is a 7/2 with haste and persist, is basically a 7/7. And then Goreclaw is going to make your creature spells with power 4 or greater cost 2 less to cast. On top of that, it pumps your army and gives them trample when it attacks. And more power matters cards like Return of the Wild Speaker definitely fit in this deck as well. It can draw you a ton of cards or pump your non-human army. Again, we've seen some toughness matters commanders before, but Zilortha gives us a power matters direction to take the deck. Now it's time for us to move on to number 8. And my 8th favorite commander from Ikoria is Snapdax, Apex of the Hunt. Snapdax is a 3/5 double striking dinosaur cat nightmare that costs 1 red, white, black. It says whenever this creature mutates, it deals 4 damage to our creature or planeswalker an opponent controls, and you gain 4 life. And its mutate cost is 2 Rakdos, white, white. So essentially mutate is a new mechanic in Ikoria, and at a base level it works like this. If you cast this spell for its mutate cost, you put it over or under target non-human creature you own, they mutate into the creature on top plus all the abilities from under it. Essentially, if you keep it on top, you keep its types, its cost, as well as its power and toughness. But regardless of if you put it on top or bottom, you keep all of its abilities. Essentially with Snapdax, you're going to mutate it onto something and make it an even deadlier threat. So the direction that I think would be fun to take this one is Infect. For the most part, Infect creatures tend to be pretty small because it only takes 10 poison counters to kill someone. For example, Plague Stinger is a 1/1 flyer with Infect. But by mutating Snapdax onto this, it's a 3/5 flying Infect double striker. So that's just a 2-shot kill. And if you've got equipment or something like Homicidal Seclusion in play, that's a 1-shot kill. You can also do some fun things like Immolating Soul Eater to make Snapdax absolutely absurd. Immolating Soul Eater has pay Phyrexian red, Immolating Soul Eater gets +1/+0 until end of turn. Putting that effect on Snapdax is really fun. Essentially you can pay 8 red mana or 16 life and Snapdax becomes a 1-shot kill. And just a note, when it says Immolating Soul Eater, it just basically is referring to this card. So yes, you can activate that ability for Snapdax even though its name changed. Again, there's a lot of fun things with Mutate that you can do, and this is just one direction. But now it's time for us to move on to number 7. And my 7th favorite commander from Ikoria is Bosh the Prey Piercer. Bosh is a 3/5 Hellion Horror that costs 3 Rakdos. It says if a source you control with an odd converted mana cost would deal damage to a permanent or player, it deals double that damage to that permanent or player instead. It does have a companion requirement, but again, we can ignore that because it's just our commander and not a companion. And that's actually a really good thing for Bosh, because in that companions episode, I talked about how limiting that companion requirement is, especially for Bosh. As a companion, you can't use any mana rocks that cost 2. But with Bosh as your commander, of course you can. And having a damage doubler in your command zone is a huge thing. So my first thought with Bosh is to build a group slug deck. Essentially with a group slug deck, you're just trying to set the entire world on fire and hope everyone else burns down first. So a card like Sulfuric Vortex, instead of dealing 2, is going to deal 4. Same thing with Zozu the Punisher, which punishes players for playing lands. And then Underworld Dreams punishes them for drawing cards. And 2 damage per card is a much bigger deal than just 1 damage per card. And now it's time for us to move on to number 6. And my 6th favorite commander from Ikoria is Riel the Everwise. Riel is a 0/3 human wizard that costs 1 blue-red. Riel gets +1/+0 for each instant and sorcery card in your graveyard. And whenever you discard 1 or more cards for the first time each turn, draw that many cards. Now this commander I think can be very powerful with the right deck. The most powerful way to take this commander is probably Wheels, because you can get an absurd amount of value from this. Let's say that you've got 7 cards in your hand and you cast a wheel effect. You discard the other 6 cards in your hand, you draw 7, and then you draw 6 from Riel. So for that wheel effect, instead of drawing 7, you're drawing 13. And again, Riel's power grows for each instant sorcery in your graveyard. Now in my opinion, that kind of a deck just becomes a bit too easy and can get a little too repetitive for me. I'm not saying it's the wrong direction to take it, I'm just saying it's not the one that I would probably take. I think you can still take this deck in an interesting and powerful direction without focusing on wheels. So I'd have repeatable discard outlets like Patchwork Gnomes. Essentially each time around the table, you're discarding 4 cards for free and drawing 4 cards to replace them. Again, you can benefit once each turn, even on your opponent's turns. I'd also have some discard payoffs like Surly Badgersaur and Glinthorn Buccaneer. Yes, Riel is probably most powerful with wheels, and it's the most optimized way to build it, but that doesn't mean that you have to. But now let's move on to number 5. And in 5th place, we've got Yorion Sky Nomad. Yorion is a 4/5 bird serpent with flying that costs 3 Azorius. When Yorion enters the battlefield, exile any number of other non-land permanents you own and control, return those cards to the battlefield at the beginning of the next end step. And although this one does say companion on it, you actually can't use this one as a companion anyways. Let's just talk about this really quick. It says your starting deck contains at least 20 cards more than the minimum deck size. In Commander, your deck is required to have exactly 100 cards, so that is impossible. Therefore, you can't use it as your companion, but you can use it as your commander, like I'm talking about now. Anyways, this is basically a mass blink spell in your command zone. So any Brago fans out there are probably going to love this. You're going to be getting a ton of value from ETBs like Cloudblazer. And then you can actually use an ETB like Feldar Guardians to blink Yorion to get even more value. And of course you can blink non-creatures like the Saga, the Mara Conjecture to get some value as well. Getting a blink spell back over and over with this can be huge. You can keep blinking your commander, which blinks your entire team, and so on and so forth. You can get a ton of value from this commander throughout the entire game. But now let's move on to number 4. And in 4th place, we've got Nethroi, Apex of Death. Nethroi is a 5/5 cat nightmare beast with death touch and lifelink that costs 2 white, black, green. It says whenever this creature mutates, return any number of target creature cards with total power 10 or less from your graveyard to the battlefield. And its mutate cost is 4 Selesnya, black, black. So essentially this can be a mass reanimate spell. Yes, you can get 1 or 2 powerful creatures with this, or you can just get a ton of small ones. The direction that I would take this deck would definitely be on that small one side. Creatures that have 0 power like a Blood Artist or Splinter Fright, you just get back for free. So for the most part, I'd focus on having creatures that have a power of 1 or less. Getting back 10 or more creatures at once is an absurd amount of value. So an Aristocrat-style deck focusing on small creatures is probably the direction I'd go. And Abzan's got plenty of ways to mill those creatures into your yard. Of course, you can have creatures help mill you like Stitcher's Supplier. And then Pitiless Plunderer can give you a ton of value when those creatures die. And of course, you can keep getting back something like a Spore Frog to annoy your opponents. But again, there's plenty of directions that you can take this commander, and this is just one of them. But a mass reanimation spell from your command zone is very valuable. But now it's time for us to get into the top 3 though with number 3. And my 3rd favorite commander from Ikoria is Garuda, Doom of Depths. Garuda is a 6/6 Demon Kraken that costs 4 Dimir. When it enters the battlefield, each player puts the top 4 cards of their library into their graveyard, put a creature card with an even converted mana cost among these cards onto the battlefield under your control. And again, this does have companion, but we can just ignore that because it's our commander. Anyways, this can be a fun commander that focuses on blinking and getting that ETB over and over again. Basically, you can just mill your opponents, steal their best even converted mana cost creatures, and get some of your own. So of course you want to run blink spells like Displace to abuse that ETB. And then you want some big even converted mana cost creatures like Spawnsire of Ulamog to cheat into play. And a reanimation spell like Beacon of Unrest can come in huge too. It lets you get an artifact or creature from anyone's graveyard onto the battlefield under your control. So if your opponent has a powerful odd creature in their yard that you milled, you can still get that too. And now let's move on to number 2. And my second favorite commander from Ikoria is Iluna, Apex of Wishes. It's a 6/6 beast elemental dinosaur with flying and trample that costs 2 green, blue, red. It has whenever this creature mutates, exile cards from the top of your library until you exile a non-land permanent card. Put that card onto the battlefield or in your hand. Its mutate cost is 3 gruel, blue, blue. So essentially it gets you one thing for free off the top. It's kind of like a cascade effect in a way, but just for non-land permanents, and that thing can have a converted mana cost of anything. So with this, I'd probably want to build a deck with some Haymaker permanents. You can use some spells to create some creature tokens, or even some permanents like Mirror Matrix to repeatedly create creature tokens to mutate onto. And then you're also going to run some powerful and high-costed permanents like Sandworm Convergence. Things like Crystal Shard can return your commander back to your hand so you can mutate again. Of course, you can build this commander in a pretty broken way by only including one non-land permanent in your deck. You can use spells or lands to make tokens, mutate onto that, and then just get Omniscience out for free. That's definitely one way that you can take it, but I think a value-centric direction like mine can be a fun one as well. But now it's time to move on to number 1. And my favorite commander from Ikoria is Zirda the Dawnwaker. Zirda is a 3/3 elemental fox that costs 1 Boros. It says abilities you activate that aren't mana abilities cost 2 less to activate. This effect can't reduce the mana in that cost to less than 1 mana. And by paying 1 and tapping it, target creature can't block this turn. Again, this is a companion, but we can ignore that since we're using it as our commander. This is a Boros commander that provides you a ton of value. Reducing the cost of all your activated abilities is huge. It can save you a lot of mana throughout the game and can help you do a ton of powerful things. So around Zirda, I would build a deck focusing on artifacts. Artifacts that are considered by many to be bad are actually made to be really good with Zirda in play. Something like Arcane Encyclopedia has pay 3 and tap it to draw a card. That's definitely not a great effect, but with Zirda in play, that just says pay 1, tap it, draw a card. Similarly, Galvanic Key has pay 3 and tap it on tap target artifact, but with Zirda in play, it just costs 1. And of course, Basalt Monolith goes infinite because of Zirda if you want to go in that direction. Zirda can turn a lot of mediocre cards into really good cards because of its effect. It's a Boros commander that focuses on value, and that is definitely unique. But with that, this show is coming to a close, so it's my turn to hear from you. So in the comments below, let me know what your favorite commander is from Ikoria and why. And make sure you're following us on social media for more updates and sneak peeks on future episodes. Again, a huge thank you to my patrons who help make this show possible. I truly couldn't do any of this without your support. If you want to support this channel directly, consider becoming a patron. There are many benefits to being a patron, including being able to vote on future commanders for deck techs. There are even tiers where you get your own personalized deck tech dedicated to you. You can check out all the Patreon tiers and rewards at patreon.com/commandersquarters. If you haven't already, make sure that you like and subscribe to the channel. Here at the Commander's Quarters, we're all about budget commander. So while you're at it, go ahead and check out some of our other types of episodes. And with that, I'm out of here. Thanks again and have a good one.